Phil Mackey and Tom Pelissero here in the Metrodome press box after maybe one of the ugliest preseason games in the history of professional football.
And that's saying something.
And the Vikings lose this game 12-10 on a last-second field goal in a game where the Chargers rested or didn't even bring several of their key starters. So I guess we'll start with the drive that ended this game because Harrison Smith was really the only defensive starter still in the game at that point. And his personal foul penalty, leading with his helmet, leaving his feet, pretty much set up the game-winning field goal for San Diego.
And at that point, you have a bunch of third-stringers and guys who are probably going to be part of that 75-man cutdown on Monday. A lot of guys who were on the field for that final drive won't be here then. Yeah, that's a young mistake by Harrison Smith. But I'll tell you what, those are the sorts of mistakes when you have a rookie who's going to play for you a lot in the season. You want him to do some of those things. It's going to cost Harrison Smith 5, 10, 15 grand, but you want him making those mistakes now, not making that same sort of hit when you get to the regular season. It looked like at the last second he maybe tried to pull up, but the thing is, it doesn't matter where your helmet goes. If you hit the guy in the head or neck area and you left your feet to do it, not only is it going to be a flag, but it's going to cost you a bunch of money.
And after the game, for what it's worth, Harrison said it was one of those plays where at first I was going to go for the ball, then I decided to go for the big hit. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Well, you're going to learn quickly as a rookie. You cannot leave your feet and launch yourself at another wide receiver like that. Harrison Smith, on the optimistic side for the Vikings, was one of the only defensive backs to come away unscathed from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, when you have that many guys go out, they lose. Well, first of all, they come into this game without Chris Cook, one of their starting cornerbacks. Josh Robinson then, that means, gets an opportunity. He suffers a concussion while making a tackle. Your safeties then get completely depleted because Mr. Raymond has his lower back tightened up. Robert Blanton's already ruled out again with the hamstring injury. Andrew Sandejo sprains an ankle. Eric Frampton pulls a groin. There's not a lot of times, Phil, where in any preseason game, even the third one, you have some of your starters out there on the final drive of the game, and the Vikings had to play Jamarcus Sanford and Harrison Smith till the end of the game because they just had nobody else. Now, the plus side is none of these injuries, at least that we know of, look to be of the major variety, the season-ending variety, but some ankles for guys like Andrew Sandejo, who's in a pretty good position to try to make this team, have been on all the starting special teams, was really making a push. Those are the sorts of things, even a 4-week ankle injury, that could be the difference between making the team or being a guy who ends up getting waived with an injury settlement and maybe brought back later on in the season.
A lot of questions about Jasper Brinkley and if he's ready to be the starting middle linebacker on this team or on any NFL team. That's a big task, especially when you were out all season last year. 2 sacks in a game tonight, from at least from his memory, first time he's ever done that at any level.
Now, the thing to remember here with Brinkley is those 2 sacks. One of them was on a blitz where he came completely untouched. The other one was he finished it off when they brought, I think, a 6-man pressure and things sort of broke down. More so than the production for me watching Jasper Brinkley was having watched him on tape the past 2 weeks, he looked really tentative. In this game, maybe it was because they blitzed him a little bit more and they wanted him to play closer to the line of scrimmage. They didn't have him going backwards as much. He didn't look like he was playing sideline to sideline. He looked like he was playing downhill, which is exactly what Brinkley has to do. It was another step forward. I think it was a more significant step forward than he even took last week. Is Jasper Brinkley going to be a 3-down linebacker? No. But can he be sufficient in the run game and occasionally in the blitzing packages? If he plays like that, yeah, he can.
Offensively, if this is your dress rehearsal for week 1 here in a couple weeks, Christian Ponder, 9 of 16, 115 yards, 3 turnovers for the first team, 4 turnovers overall for the Vikings offense, a bad interception for Ponder, a really bad interception, and 5 sacks taken. I mean, that doesn't really make me comfortable if I'm an offensive coordinator or a head coach.
No, I mean, the numbers look bad, and the interception was one of those plays that you just hope that Christian Ponder in his second season is not going to be making, where you see what happens is they're hoping that corner is going to go and follow Michael Jenkins to the inside of the field and leave Percy Harvin open to the flat. Well, opponents have seen the Vikings run that play often enough that they know, okay, we don't have to worry about Michael Jenkins. That's the thing. And I read one of the quotes from DeAndre Presley over in the Chargers locker room, the guy who picked off that ball, and he says, well, the quarterback stared it down, which Ponder did, but also they knew where the ball was not going to go on that play. It was not going to go to Michael Jenkins. When you have receivers who are not matchup threats on the field, when you don't have that multiplicity of matchup threats, teams can afford to double team, they can afford to drop out, they can afford to buzz underneath routes like that and play the ball, watch the quarterback's eyes, because with Michael Jenkins, he's not going to scare you. Maybe he's going to catch the ball, but he's not a threat to end up making it into a big gain. Those are the sort of things they're going to miss when they don't have Jerome Simpson without having that vertical threat in the offense. Devin Aromashadu finally gets on the board, catches a few balls tonight. Michael Jenkins got the more opportunities early on in the game at the split end position, but he's just not a guy who's ever going to scare you with his speed. He's moving better over the past couple weeks than he was early on in camp. I think he's on the team. I think they know what they're going to get from him, but you don't have that vertical element in the offense. And looking at the guys that they have right now, unless they decide to roll Emmanuel Arsenault out there and he blows us away next week, you just don't see another guy for those first 3 weeks who's really going to be able to play that position the way it's intended in Bill Musgrave's offense.
Matt Asiata, second-year running back /
My guy.
fullback out of Utah.
He's my guy.
You've been touting all camp long. He winds up fumbling one time, which at the time the fumble looked like it was going to negate him with a 50-plus yard night, 5.5 yards a carry, but then he sort of redeems himself by scoring the go-ahead touchdown before the Vikings wound up giving up the field goal. All in all, what in your mind stands out more, the turnover as we count down here to the 53-man roster, or the yards gained and the touchdown and all the positive?
Well, I think you can never take anything in a vacuum. You got to take it within context. And Asiata is not a guy who's had ball security issues in the past. He's a fullback.
Yeah.
That's what they brought him in to do. That's primarily what he's done. But he was a one-back at times at Utah. Never stayed healthy there. He was in camp a year ago, ended up having an injury, came back this year. He's been healthy. You see, he can do things in a variety of different aspects of the game. He catches the ball really well out of the backfield. He can run a little bit. He's got a little bit of a burst back there. And he's a decent blocker, too. They started working him in more on special teams. He's a guy who now, I've gone through most of camp here saying Lex Hilliard's going to be the guy because he's in on special teams and because he can run the ball between the tackles. But Asiata, I don't think there's any question, has just a little bit more burst than Hilliard does. You wonder about the durability concerns, but the Vikings are going to have a real thorough examination here as they go into the final cutdown next weekend of not only what do we need in that third running back, what do we need in that third running back when Adrian Peterson's out, and who's going to be able to play stuff for us on special teams. Ryan D'Imperio, who sat out tonight, we didn't find out actually what his injury was because we all forgot by the time that 3.5-hour game was over to ask. He sat out this game. He's another guy who's been a core special teamer. Jerome Felton, the starting fullback, doesn't play special teams. All those sorts of numbers games, that's what you're playing when you come down to it. Because we can sit here and say, well, they're going to keep 4 running backs. They're going to keep 9 offensive linemen. Not necessarily. You're going to keep the best 53 and think about who the guys are you're going to be able to slide through waivers and bring back on the practice squad.
And at the risk of turning this into this 5-minute video into a half-hour video, the replacement referees tonight. Now, I've admittedly been covering baseball most of this season and have paid enough attention to some of the preseason games around the league, but tonight, just watching 3 hours tonight, the NFL has to get 3.5. The NFL has to get the regular officials back into play here. It was embarrassing.
Here's the thing. Regular officials are going to make mistakes. And this is what I've been saying from the beginning. If you've listened to my show, you know that I've been on this since the referee lockout began. It's not
I don't have my people meter on when I listen to your show.
Apparently not. It's not that they're not going to get all the calls right, because the regular officials don't get all the calls right. It's that they don't know. How many times do we see a ball spotted in the wrong place tonight? Yeah. You have a touchback and a personal foul. They attempted to spot that at the 27-yard line. You had a sack and a penalty on the offense that the Vikings declined, and they gave the Chargers a gain. I don't even know how you go about making those decisions. They flagged Pat Brown when the Vikings defense was on the field for being offside. There is no number 79 on the Vikings defense. You had a variety of errors. You just have little things, and I didn't even mention the 2 turnover plays, which are both obvious. Lex Hilliard's fumble, and even more so, I got a better look at the Percy Harvin, or the ball thrown for Percy Harvin that was picked off. It's just an obvious call. The ball comes nowhere close to the ground, and an official 10 feet away manages to botch that call. It's a combination of not knowing the rules, not knowing how to enforce things. There were some other times in this game where I think that you saw some calls and you just wondered about them. You're always going to do that with officials. We're always going to be able to question it. But when there's basic things they're not doing right, or when they're having teams burn challenge flags on plays that you absolutely should never with the naked eye, and everyone in the building can see you're wrong.
To waste a challenge on these plays, too, is even more
You can't go in that direction. It's just, they're in a tough spot right now. I think the bigger concern for the NFL should be whether or not personal fouls are going to be called correctly, and I think we've seen some hits on quarterbacks that haven't been called the same way. If the NFL wants to latch onto the idea that they're trying to make the game safer, you need to bring back the officials who are going to do the job the correct way.
Yeah. And most importantly, if you're a head official, turn your microphone off before you blow the whistle, so 50,000 fans don't have pierced eardrums.
I'll give this guy credit. I think it was Wayne. I want to get his name right before I rip him here. Wayne Elliott did actually have his mic at a normal volume, whereas the guy last week had it like 20 decibels higher than that, and it was just ear piercing. But the thing is, Wayne Elliott, when he comes out after those 2 turnover calls and they get challenged, they get overturned, I've never heard a more depressing announcement. Call's been overturned.
Yeah, this
is
like embarrassing.
We're sorry. I thought Wayne was going to cry. I felt a little bad for him, but go back to the lingerie league or wherever you came from. It's too big of a game.
Don't bring the lingerie league into this.
You like the lingerie league,
It's a
though.
great league. What can I say?
You're a season ticket holder for the Valkyrie, aren't you?
I think it's actually defunct now. I think the LFL is still looking for funding. The
Really?
season's canceled until they get
I
more
can't
funding.
believe that their business model
Can't
is
imagine
unsound.
why. All right, plenty of Vikings coverage at 1500ESPN.com, and I guess Twins coverage if you're still interested in that team that plays for another month plus. Tom Pelissero, Phil Mackey. See you next week.